the 16th episode of Zooming In with Gen Z. I'm your host, Haley Taylor Schlitz. Thanks for being here. Before we get started, I would like to remind you all to please like, share, comment, follow, and subscribe. Not only does this help you stay up on our fantastic conversations, but it allows the algorithm to do its thing so others can tune in too. If you're Gen Z, stop scrolling. You need to hear this news. Tampon tax repeal. Tampon tax? Repeal? Hear this quote from the Detroit News. Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed a bill Thursday to repeal taxes on the sale of feminine hygiene products, saying the legislation would make a difference for every menstruating Michigander. After years of trying to repeal this tax, I am proud that we are bringing people together to put Michiganders first and drive down costs on these essential products. Everyone should be able to take care of their most basic healthcare needs without an unnecessary added financial burden, said Governor Whitmer. I am starting my show amplifying this message because this right here, this is what the whole country should strive for. Say it louder for the people in the back. Everyone should be able to take care of their most basic healthcare needs without an unnecessary added financial burden. Dog who walks upright like a human after losing his leg in an accident becomes TikTok sensation. That's a pretty long title. Let's see this video from TikTok, of course.
I have to go to work.
I love seeing people's pets on TikTok. It makes me jealous. While they have amazing animals like this doggo here, I am over here hoping my dogs won't knock over my lights. This dog inspires me. Am I the only one? What a fighter. Rosa Parks, 72%, Pikachu, 85%. What a great start. Internet provider CenturyLink recently ran an online poll for Gen Z members, asking them to match video game characters and famous people with the correct portraits out of 5 possible options per question. As you can imagine, Gen Z may need to spend some time studying based on the results. Gen Z correctly identified video game characters at an average rate of 80%. Gen Z correctly identified public figures with 56% accuracy, with the top 5 spots going to a diverse spread of icons: 2 artists, 1 activist, 1 politician, and 1 CEO. Okay, Gen Z, this makes me worried. Pikachu, but not Rosa Parks? This is what happens when you ban books and avoid teaching history. No, I can't believe this. I need to see this for myself. Okay, Gen Z, who is this? Okay, I hope you didn't hesitate. Now, who is this? Please disprove this, guys. Leave comments. I'll check later. Don't cheat. Now, we have a student leader who is a voice for change. Channing Hill is a student at Howard University and the president of the Howard NAACP chapter. She is part of the student leaders who have been challenging the Howard University administration about the deplorable and unsafe conditions on campus for students. For the past few weeks, Howard students have been leading a sit-in building takeover and online protests about the conditions on campus. This is an important act by Gen Z members that honestly isn't receiving enough media coverage. Howard students are going into significant student loan debt to pay for college, and they deserve better. Let's welcome Channing to Zooming In and get up to speed on what triggered the protests and what the latest news is. Hey, Channing.
Hi, Haley. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm Gucci like the flip-flops.
I love it. I can't wait to get into this conversation because, like I said, this is not receiving enough media coverage. So, to start, I was hoping that you could share with our viewers what happened a few weeks ago on the Howard University campus when students grew frustrated by the lack of response to their concerns about living safety conditions on campus.
Absolutely. So, on October 12th, Howard University, Young Democratic Socialists of America, our Howard University Student Association, as well as a nonprofit organization that was founded by a Howard student on Howard's campus, the Live Movement, organized a town hall in which they invited our Howard University administrators to come. Some administrators said they would not be coming because they were out of town. Some blatantly decided not to show up. That clear disregard for student concerns regarding the housing, regarding to welfare, regarding to safety on campus, governance, and the decisions that were made on student behalves, prompted that prompted the students to say, as many Howard students have done before us in the 80s, in the 90s, in 2018, in 2019, to begin a protest, an occupation protest, as done many times before on Howard's campus. Um, that has now lasted for 25 days.
Wow. Gosh, how long have students had these concerns? Have students brought them up before? I'm thinking like the very beginning of all of this. Were you
Absolutely.
there for it? Has this been going
Yeah.
on years?
Yeah, years. Girl. So first of all, for this year, this occupation protest is the third or fourth protest to happen on Howard's campus regarding these issues this year. There's a protest in 2019 regarding housing and scholarships in 2019. The protest in 2018 matched our demands now in 2021. And then furthermore, we saw a Hilltop article written in 2001, the year I was born. It was actually written before I was born, talking about mold in the dorms from 20 years ago, the same dorms.
Gosh, that's ridiculous. 20 years
Ludicrous.
not addressed. That is ridiculous. Like I said, this is not receiving enough media coverage. This is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
The news coverage that I have seen, like I said, did not dig deep enough into this issue at all, obviously. In fact, I believe the social media posts Howard students are sharing have educated more people than the media. I saw the videos of the brown water coming from safety eye wash stations. Okay, guys, look at that. That is literally disgusting. I saw a picture of flooding in the dorms and even a mushroom growing from the ceiling of a dorm room. I think I would move out. Can you share with us just how challenging the circumstances are for students right now?
So there's students in the protest in the building who are not in the building just out of solidarity, but out of genuine fear to return back to the dorms that have been making them sick.
Yes.
Um, and the severity of the issue is that students were sent to the hospital. And that continues to not only miss administration, but to miss the general public. Like, students were sent to the hospital.
This, like I said, is not being covered by the media well enough at all. Like this is 20 years of this ongoing. Students have been sent to the hospital, and the stories that you see are very superficial. This is. I'm glad that we're having this conversation. That's that. I will leave it at that. I will leave it nicely. But with the social media and the way you guys are speaking out, students have received some support from leaders in DC. Senator Warren and Congresswoman Presley have made statements and are visited campus, and Reverend Jesse Jackson was on campus a few days ago. How have students received this support, and do you think it's even helping?
I think their support is helping, as in it boosts our morality. It reminds us that we're doing the right thing, we're walking in the right path. When
Yes.
you have a university that's continuously gaslighting you and combating you with $1 million PR firms,
Yeah.
it's almost like, am I crazy? Like,
Yeah.
is there truly something wrong with me? Until Reverend Jesse Jackson says, no, stay strong. You deserve first class housing. You deserve to live in rooms that are truly worth the money that you're paying for. You deserve that without the $10,000 a year over housing. In regards to Senator Warren, in regards to Cori Bush was on campus, it's tremendously validating, and it raises public attention not only to the issue of Howard, but to the issue regarding national funding for HBCUs. Um, I think it's helping, making sure that this situation never changes, like that the situation changes. But it's clear that our administration continue to dig their feet in.
Yeah, I absolutely understand what you're saying about sometimes if you don't. Also, I think it is important to recognize that this is what I was talking about with being jealous of the other dogs. I'm sorry about all of that. But anyway, I think she's also just as frustrated as we are about this. But I completely understand what you're saying about not, when it feels like other people are not even recognizing the struggle and what you're literally speaking up and speaking out about, it might feel like you said, like, am I being unreasonable? But having the support, if nothing else, gives you guys that passion to keep going, and that's really, really important. But yeah, thank you, Callie, for your input. Senator Warren's social media post was interesting because she pointed out that the dorms at Howard University are operated by the private equity managed company Corvius. Corvius? When I look at their leadership, visit www.corvius.com, I don't see any diversity at all. Can we all just take a moment to look at this beautiful leadership right here? They seem to be growing and taking over housing on college campuses, especially in Georgia. Has Corvius or their representatives said anything about how they have students living in these conditions?
They have not. It's kind of funny because Senator Warren's engagement on the Corvius face of the issue is significant because Corvius has apparently a reputation for these types of incidences, not just in dormitories, but in regards to veteran housing and
She knocked it over. And also, I can no longer hear Channing.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Sorry, I got a call.
You're good. I think the dogs have hit all the marks. That's what that was. They knocked over my light. They've done it. They will not be in the room next episode. But I'm sorry for that interruption. Please continue.
So, no, it's just fascinating because it goes back to our accountability problem with our university. They signed a 40-year contract with Corvius. They contracted the management of our dorms out and claimed that this is what kept kept the university afloat financially over the COVID year. But we also know over the COVID year, they received $40 million from Mackenzie Scott and raised $2 million to bring Nicole Hannah-Jones and Ta-Nehisi Coates to campus. And I don't even want to know how much Dean Felicia Rashad is getting. So it seems that there's clearly an influx of money to this university. Where's it going?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to follow the paper. Gosh, let's see. I will try to ignore everything that's going on right now. But I also saw the post by the Howard University student paper that they would not be intimidated from covering the protest. They shared the efforts the university leadership was taking to try and censor the stories they were running. This honestly shocked me that an institution of higher learning, one with so much respect and amazing alumni, would try to censor the student paper. Are you shocked by this attempt to suppress the truth? And is there something Gen Z could take away from this type of attack on our voices?
It's kind of weird because I want to say I'm surprised but not surprised.
Yeah.
Howard University is great. I love my school with all my heart. It's kind of funny because my family and my friends outside of Howard, they're like, you went to Howard and made Howard your whole personality. And that's true, I did. I'm definitely that person. But there's this culture here, and it's not just the Howard culture. Sometimes we see it a lot of times in Black families where we keep our dirty laundry inside, where in order to protect the illustriousness, as Howard is often, the crown jewel of our community, in order to keep it a crown jewel, we have to keep the ugliness of the university inside. So, and I think in trying to protect, images of Black excellence and images of success and trying to protect upward mobility that we have at Howard, they sometimes don't know where to draw the line. And when it comes to the hilltop, that's just wrong. There's truly no excuse for it, but the university is entrenched in protecting this image, and this image is oppressive, and it's only in response to racial issues in America, and it does not serve us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you would think that if they're trying to protect their image, what they would do is listen to you guys, address the concerns, and none of this would have to be happening. If they were just like understanding and maybe got the eye wash water to not be brown and remove the mushrooms from the ceiling, then maybe none of this would be happening if they actually took action. Like they should. They shouldn't. It shouldn't even get this bad, but since it has, they should at least address it. But yep, I mean, I completely understand what you're saying. Sometimes, people, they, like you said, they don't know where to draw the line, and it's important that you guys are speaking out about where that line needs to be drawn. This, just speaking of the Howard administration, it seems that they are being deliberately harsh and not even being willing to talk to the students about the issues in a serious way. What would your message be, I guess, to those administrators if they were watching right now?
I think harsh is putting it lightly. The university is actively committing violence upon a campus that is majority composed of young Black women.
Yeah.
The university is violently trying to silence us. A fellow protester said she's going to need, you know, therapy after dealing with this,
Yeah.
because they come at us with mob mentality. Like, I feel
Mhm.
like I'm facing the Godfather. Um,
Mhm.
so what would I would try and remind them that I'm just a child of our village.
Yep.
I'm the epitome. Again, I've said this many times in different interviews. I'm the epitome of a Howard University student.
Mhm.
I'm a active speech and debate team member. I'm on multiple orgs on campus.
Yeah.
I aspire. My dream school was Howard, and my dream law school was Howard Law. I am what pushes this campus forward, and I am not the enemy. I will
Yeah.
tell them that I am not the enemy, and that I am committed to finding solutions so that other students can experience the Mecca, the true Mecca.
Mhm.
That's not this moldy dorms, but is these professors who teach us about Black Africana genealogies, intellectual
Mhm.
genealogies that we are not exposed to anywhere else.
Mhm.
These professors, these hallways, this yard that the likes of Kwame Ture and Zora Neale Hurston and Toni Morrison and Thurgood Marshall have walked across of.
Mhm.
That's the Mecca. That tells me who I am, because I know where I've come from.
Mhm.
And I would love to bring other students here. I would love to tell my little sister to come here. But it's
Mhm.
hard for me to ask her to make the sacrifice of subclass, second class, and third class living conditions while doing so.
Yep, absolutely. I hope they registered all of that, because I see our comments are speaking my mind, honestly, talking about how we need to support our young people. And like you said, you are the epitome of their student body. You are their goal, who they want to come, who they want their alumni to be, and they need to support their student body, because the students literally make them who they are. Their alumni makes them who they are.
Absolutely.
And yeah, no, I absolutely agree with everything
This
you're saying.
tuition check makes them who they are.
Yes. Yes, literally. Like, you pay their bills, and I see the comments just rolling in of like, absolutely. And I'm glad that, it's registering with our viewers, because it definitely is registering with me. And if they want to keep their, their crown jewel status, they need to make changes. They need to listen to their student body. Because like you said, you should be their top value. Like, this is, they are a school and you are the student. So I absolutely agree, and so do our viewers. So thank you for saying what you said. But let's see. Let me make sure this is, yeah, okay. So I saw that the Howard University administration tried to do a PR stunt by organizing a media tour and sending in cleaning crews to make decorative changes before allowing the news media to tour the designated space. Howard students shared on social media the crews cleaning, painting, hanging art, and more. How did that make you and your classmates feel after all this speaking up, speaking out, all this, fired up, and to see that their response was, like you said, not only to not address it, not to hear you, and to be like violent toward their own students who they should be proud of and taking care of, and you are like, their students are the reason why they exist, but they're actually trying to like take down you guys' message by putting up these advertisements in media that make their living spaces that, they obviously know they need to do better because they got into a cleaning crew. And so, how does that make you and your classmates feel? This blatant, like this purposeful, like this acts of hate.
It was, I mean, at that point when they had started hand picking and walking media crews
Hmm.
down, it was already very clear how entrenched university administration was in this fight. It's very funny, and I say fight, and I've seen people on Twitter saying the students are at war with their university, and it's, we didn't create this war, like I did not realize I was stepping into a war,
Yeah.
where another side is attacking me and
Yeah.
coming at my throat, like trying to discredit me and saying I'm a liar. Um, but when we saw that, it was just, were the initial pictures not enough? When we
Mm-hmm.
saw that, it was crazy to me, because whether it was 3 rooms or 3,000 rooms,
Yeah.
it was moldy.
Yeah.
And then it continues to be moldy, because any adult understand any person who understands mold knows
Mm-hmm.
that mold is only like the exterior,
Yeah.
um the exterior representation of an interior issue.
Yeah.
Mold is a foundational issue.
Yeah.
That means you need to take the walls out and pull up the carpet and look up, wash all of it down.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Yeah.
was it was the ignorance, the blatant ignorance of someone. They actually sent out an email where they said we wipe the surfaces down with antimicrobial wipes. I'm like, so you're telling me you dealt with an invasive mold issue by wiping surfaces down with Lysol, and I'm getting expelled? Okay.
Yep.
It was incredulous. We're incredulous, just astounded.
Yep. Yep. And I see our comments 10,000%. Like, absolutely. Like you said, you think that the problem is going to be solved by like just wiping down a surface. And I mean, I think it's really representative of, like you said, the war that's going on. The mold is just the exterior representation of the interior issue. These living conditions are just the exterior representation of an interior issue, of this interior war, of this interior disrespect to the students and disregard for their value. I I agree. I agree. And so do our comments. So like I said, I'm really glad that it's really resonating with our viewers the way it's resonating with me, because I agree 10,000%. So where do you think this ends up? Do you think the university leadership will do the right thing eventually? Do you believe the students and alumni have lost faith in Howard University leadership? And do you want bigger changes, like like we were talking about? This is just the symptom of the disease, or do you think that this is like the big issue? So what do you
This is the rotting leaves on a deeply rooted tree.
think?
This is definitely symptoms of just this interior disease. Um, where I think it ends up is that never again will a student have to go through my experience. They may have their own experience that might just be just as terrible, but this same specific experience, I think the university fears this. I think and personally, I'm not proud of the way my university has been dragged through the mud.
Yep.
I would never want that. I do not want to devalue the name of my degree at all, especially trying to go into law school. No.
Mm-hmm.
Um, However, I think to a certain extent this was necessary so students don't have to go through this again, and we could, continue to reach for the true illustriousness. I am not necessarily disheartened in my university,
Yeah.
because the hundreds of students that have supported me and expressed their support, whether they're at the front lines or not, the way the alumni, we have alumni sleeping on tents outside of the building. The
Mm-hmm.
way our professors, we had a professor faculty walkout on campus yesterday. So it's incredible that students have been sleeping on concrete for 25 days.
Yeah.
Professors are walking out of classes. Alumni are sleeping in tents in regards to this issue, and the administration is still ignoring it. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea what will put this to an end. However, I do know that should a student come to Howard University after me, there's going to be fear in the hearts of whatever president, because I hope it's not Wayne A. or Frederick, but there will be fear in the hearts of the administration, and
Yeah.
that will hopefully propel them to do better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. And like you said, if you want that, Howard like wants, like all schools, the alumni if they're complaining or not proud of, or like just ashamed or disappointed in their university, if the professors, if the students are disappointed, it's definitely going to deter other students from going to the school. And like you said, would you recommend that your sister comes to the school and ask her to live like this? That's the, that's something that shouldn't even have to be a question. And like we were saying at the beginning of the conversation, Howard, did they care about their image and being this pride and joy of our community? All they have to do is address these issues, listen to their student body, their alumni, their faculty, and find a way to make these changes. Because I mean, this is not helping their crown jewel status, that's for sure. But I mean, like we were saying, it seems what is happening at Howard is very symbolic of a bigger movement by Gen Z members to speak out and fight injustice wherever they see it or experience it. How do you feel these types of actions are shaping Gen Z, and what important lessons are we learning from them?
I think we're learning to be fearless. And I say that very lightly because I know that, especially on Howard's campus, I come from Black people have always been fearless. Black people have always defied the odds. Martin Luther King Jr. was never a popular person until after he died. So
Yeah.
I think I say that Gen Z learning to be fearless is we are learning to hold each other accountable. Like we are
Mhm.
learning what loving ourselves looks like. We are learning how to, like, it's now our time to shine, you know?
Mhm.
Like the reins are being passed down. You
Yeah.
know, our leaders are getting older.
Mhm.
Um and it's now time for us to pick up the mantle where they left off. You know, this
Mhm.
HBCU debate has never been is not a new debate. They were talking about the nature of HBCUs with uh, Du Bois, and they were talking about nature of HBCUs in the '60s, and when we're always talking about Black education, HBCUs have always been the forefront of that conversation.
Mhm.
However, how do we continue to keep moving forward is now a conversation that Gen Z is getting involved in, and I am so happy to
Yeah.
see that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fearless, inspired, invested. I love it. What advice would you give you give members of Gen Z on how we can take the next step in our activism? By 2022 and 2024, a large number of us will be eligible to vote for the first time. Why should we vote?
We should vote. A lot of people don't like saying this. Um, Black people died over the right to vote.
Yep.
Black people died over disenfranchisement. Our ancestors died over having the right to vote. Whether that is what, and that's not a nice way to put it,
Yep.
but I personally, have to continue to look optimistically and say that something they didn't die for no reason,
Yeah.
and furthermore, the concept of Black radical imagination is that we take the right to vote and civil advocacy is very basic. It's
Mhm.
now our time and our turn to keep applying issues, radical thought, political thought, new imaginative thought, Africana intellectual genealogy thought to these issues and keep building upon them. So,
Yeah.
writing the right to vote, bare minimum.
Yeah.
How do we use that right to vote? How do we mobilize? How do we organize to make sure that we continue to reach first class citizenhood, to continue to reach first class housing in our
Mhm.
institutions?
Yeah.
Um, I would tell them to be fearless. I think on my campus, the threat of retaliation from our university is very real. In
Mhm.
2018, they sent SWAT to remove the protesters from the A building. Um, it is very real to our physical bodies. It's very real to
Mhm.
our futures. It's very real to our present state and status at the institution. And I have to encourage people to be fearless because at the end of the day, when you look in your heart and you know what you value and you know what's right and wrong, You could never lose anything as long as you're standing on the right side of right.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And like as you were talking, I thought of a quote that I have talked about in the show before. So this may be familiar to our returning viewers, but a quote by Dr. Eddie Glaude that says, "Turn your anger into motivation." I really appreciate that you're like, don't be fearless, don't be intimidated, and definitely like I feel like it goes hand in hand with what you're saying. Turn your anger into motivation. Definitely speak up, speak out, be interested, be invested, be fearless. But before we leave, I want to take a moment and talk about your journey as a fellow Texan. Can you share when your interest in activism started? Was this something you learned at home? I know you mentioned law school. Is that where you want to go next? Like, a little more about you.
Right. So I went to Euless Trinity High School. I grew up in HEB, 20 minutes outside of Dallas, 10 minutes when you speeding and they don't be checking. You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up, I'm 20 years old. I grew up in the Trayvon in the the aftermath of Trayvon Martin.
Mm-hmm.
It I grew up with my mom. She never bought hoodies for me. To this day, my mom does not buy hoodies for me because
Yeah.
I was a black kid growing up in the suburbs and living in Texas. I could just have easily been Trayvon Martin.
Yeah.
That was I grew up, in Euless, in DFW, certain parts of Dallas, getting pulled over, hand on wheels, don't move.
Mm-hmm.
um I grew up very aware at 12 years old what stand your ground meant and what that
Mm-hmm.
meant to my life.
Mm-hmm.
And while you don't necessarily know when you I can never not see, like, what a Confederate flag is in elementary school, like you can those are things that you cannot miss. You are trained in defense. You're trained to be cognizant of your surroundings at every moment in time. Um, and sometimes you don't know, but it makes you angry, and you don't
Yeah.
know what to do with that anger.
Yeah.
It's unfair. It's so unfair, and it's like James Baldwin. To be black in America is to be in a constant state of rage.
Yeah.
And when I was 15, personally, when I was 15, I went to Central, 14, 15. I was at Central Junior High in Bedford. My best friend at the time was arrested and went to jail. Yeah, kitty jail, I guess, but jail all the same to a 15-year-old. Um, he was locked up for about 4 or 5 months, possibly 6. That was a while ago. I don't remember. But I remember how terrified he was. I remember how he never got a chance to speak to a lawyer. I remember how actually it was in jail that it was the first time he went to a doctor health wise since for years. And then when while he was locked up and he went to the doctor's office, they found out that he had an STD that had been lying dormant for a while. That is so dangerous to his
Yeah.
health.
Yes.
But he didn't have access to healthcare. He
Yeah.
didn't have access to mentorship. He didn't have access to a lot of things that I was just by nature privileged to because my family happened to be lucky.
Yeah.
Because maybe my family had 40 acres and a mule. Like it, and from that moment on, I became committed. I want to be a lawyer because I want to help children who get caught up in the system.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
it was never an option for me,
Mm-hmm.
it was never a choice for
Yeah.
me to ignore it. I wanted to wear a hoodie like everybody else. I didn't understand. Like,
Yeah.
I was in class. My parents were very cautious about me wearing braids to school
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't want me to be stereotyped.
Yeah.
However, I didn't have to wear braids to be stereotyped.
Yeah.
And I had teachers in junior high that said my junior high was the lowest performing school in the district because of how demographically diverse it was. Uh, to a bunch of 12-year-olds. Like, I never had a choice, I didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And that quote that you said about being in a constant state of rage, I've heard before, also by Dr. Glaude. And right after that, he followed up with, if you're not upset, you have to ask yourself what's wrong. Because, I mean, and like after everything you said, like, you know, I hope that our viewers are upset. And if you're not, you need to ask yourself what's wrong. Especially after hearing everything that she just said. And she's not alone. She's not unique. This is every Black woman, every Black person's experience in America is something very similar, if not exactly that. And so it's definitely turning this anger into motivation. That's key, you know, because you're in a constant state of rage, but using that anger, using that rage, being motivated to, you know, speak up, speak out. You use your voice, you know, be the change you want to see. That's the key. So I definitely hope that this has resonated with our viewers the way it's resonated with me. Channing, can you share with us where we can follow you on social media so we can stay up to date about what's going on at Howard, and maybe share with our viewers how they can support you or the other students who go to school?
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter at Chan_the_world. And you can follow me on Instagram at ChanTankersaurus.
Mm-hmm.
That Instagram handle is a little bit obnoxious, but I haven't gotten around to changing it. I see that she has it spelled out at the bottom. Follow me, I follow back. I also do poetry, you know, on the lighter side of things. So
Yeah.
I would love to meet some new people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I personally love poetry myself too. So I will be scrolling through your social media. Do not mind me if you see a like from a post that was a couple years ago. So
No problem,
um,
sis.
but thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us and talking to us today, because this has been very impactful, very necessary.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Wow, Channing, your voice has power and you're living your truth. Thank you so much for being an inspiration to other Gen Zers, not just on your campus, but on others all over the country who hear your story and get inspired by your passion. As usual, we will close out our show with a segment called Zooming In. Let's take a look at who's being magnified for being magnificent. This zoom in is actually very unique because it is an interview I had with Mary Pat Higgins, CEO of the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum. I wanted to dive deeper into the rising attempts by some adults across the nation to not only attack CRT, but also take it to new levels by pushing to ban books from classrooms and libraries and school libraries, or argue for opposing views. Let's take a moment to listen to this interview with Miss Higgins. After everything going on around book banning, and after the last episode's conversation specifically on the suggestion by school administrators in Southlake, Texas, that opposing views be part of any reading on the Holocaust, I felt it important to continue that conversation and discuss what Gen Z should be learning from this in order to make a change. Today, we are fortunate to have Mary Pat Higgins, the CEO of the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum. It is important to discuss how we can learn about and from these issues when our education is being attacked. Hello, Ms. Higgins. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, Haley. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. I want to start off by reminding my Gen Z viewers what happened in the Holocaust and why we should never, ever forget it. 6 million Jewish people were targeted, rounded up, and murdered by the leaders and people of Nazi Germany. Another 5 million people were also targeted, rounded up, and murdered by Nazi Germany. These numbers are real, and there is no opposing view of this deliberate and planned act of genocide. Last episode, I talked to a student activist on this same issue, and I had told her about how when I was 12 years old, my parents took my siblings and I on a family trip to Europe. They made sure that our first stop was the city of Amsterdam to take a tour of the Anne Frank House and Museum. I vividly remember touring the home and learning about Anne's life and the actions her family and neighbors took to try and hide them from the Nazis. Experiencing that now and seeing the news out of Southlake this week made me angry. When you heard about the news regarding the direction from Southlake Carroll ISD administrators to teachers on having to have opposing views, materials in their classroom on subjects like the Holocaust, what did you initially think?
Well, sadly, Haley, I wasn't surprised. I've been worried about the impact of HB 3979, which stipulates that teachers teach varying perspectives about controversial subjects. And hopefully we can all agree that the history of the Holocaust is not controversial. It's one of the most well-documented and most horrific atrocities in the modern era.
Yeah.
But there are people that deny that the Holocaust happened. So from some perspective, it is controversial.
Yeah.
So I think the unintended consequences of this law led the administrator to advise teachers that they needed to share an opposing view to the Holocaust, which I know she's very sorry about.
Yeah. It's terrible. For Generation Z, human rights atrocities like the Holocaust are always viewed in the confines of our history classes. In most cases, it is presented and received as a horrible act that in no way could possibly happen today. Same thing with book burning, slavery, denying women equal rights, and other acts of genocide. Why is it important for Generation Z to understand the historical importance of these events?
Well, if we don't study and learn from history, we're at risk of letting it repeat itself. One of the very first things we teach in the Holocaust wing of the museum is that the Nazi Party didn't start being elected until 5 years before Hitler took power.
Yeah.
We need to learn from that things can change dramatically, and we need to be watching and aware and standing up when we see, our country or, our community going in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. And like you're talking about with history and making sure that we learn it, one of the things that always strikes me that I had learned was the number of Germans and other people who knew what was going on and did nothing. They stood there and watched as this was happening right where they lived. It was their neighbors and friends. And when I see what's going on now, especially the fights by adults over our schools, I feel there are many people doing the same thing again in a way. We are all watching this happen, and it's like we believe it can't get worse. Do you feel the same way?
Haley, I do. At the museum, we talk about the difference between upstander and bystander behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal in teaching the history we cover at the museum is to impact attitudes and behaviors and to encourage people to step up and get engaged, because one person can make a difference. So in this time, I just hope that everyone that follows you will realize that it's our responsibility to speak out when we don't agree with something and to make sure that our voices are heard, because it does make a difference. And for people that just turn a blind eye and think, oh, this will pass, this doesn't affect me, maybe this won't affect you, but the next infringement on civil rights will.
Yep. Absolutely. And to build on that, when it comes to people speaking up and speaking out, for many families across the nation, there is growing concern that these attacks on keeping the truth from being taught in our schools will make it harder to engage students on important historical issues like the Holocaust and slavery. Here in Dallas-Fort Worth, like the Dallas-Fort Worth region, we're fortunate to have great resources like the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum to use as an educational supplement. But what advice would you give families and students who are seeking to find resources, especially online, to help educate ourselves on these issues?
Well, first and foremost, I believe in the power of the resources the museum offers. If you go to our website, whhrm.org, on the education tab, there are toolkits that are specifically focused on how to combat race and racism, how to confront anti-Semitism. Next year, we'll be adding a toolkit on confronting AAPI hatred.
Yeah.
And those toolkits give reading resources, actions that you can take, short videos that you can watch and discuss with your friends and with your family. And, the great thing is, I know that there are a lot of other organizations like the ADL that has great resources on their website. If people want to know, how to be aware and how to combat hatred, come to our site, go to the ADL's website. There's some great resources out there.
Absolutely. I hope our viewers are writing this down, because that's very important. And when it comes to, people taking action and, like making sure that they educate themselves and, get motivated, get angry. I have spent the last couple of episodes of the show focusing on the amazing student leaders across our nation who are standing up and pushing back against this wave of hate that is spreading across our communities and attacking our educational systems. When you see these young Gen Z leaders standing up and engaging their communities on social justice issues, how does that make you feel, and what can adults do to support the important work these students are doing?
Well, it gives me hope, for the future, because frankly, there are days that I get discouraged. There are days that we all get discouraged about all of the things that are happening in our country and our world that we need to be aware of and fight against. But when I see students like the students at Colleyville who stood up and protested when their principal was put on probation and fired, it really gives me hope. And the great thing is 3 of those organizing students are on the museum's junior board. So I think, adults need to give students opportunities like serving on our junior board, getting them engaged, listening to their voices and empowering them, because that is our future. It's the next generation, and those students will bring about change.
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah. It's definitely why I was so inspired by their actions and brought them on the show. So yeah, I definitely
so proud of them.
Yes, that is the perfect. Yeah, very proud. Yeah, but when it comes to supporting Gen Z, the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum has amazing exhibits that allows families and students to learn about the Holocaust and human rights issues. The Pivot American Wing does an amazing job focusing on the ideals of our nation and how we as a nation are learning to live up to them over time. The wing talks about the different group experiences in American history and the repair process to address historical and ongoing human rights attacks. If there was one thing that Gen Z members could learn from the Pivot American Wing, what would it be?
The importance of speaking up and standing up when you see something wrong. That's that upstander behavior. The whole wing focuses on the difference that upstanders have made, because if we take our democracy and our rights for granted, there will be people in our country that don't enjoy equal rights. So it's our responsibility to stand up and make sure that everyone is treated equally in our country.
Absolutely. And when it comes to being an upstander, fortunately, Gen Z is, we spent our entire lives online and we've had access to social media. But, and on top of that, we don't really know a world where we don't have immediate access to technology and information. But at the same time, we also see the rise of deliberate misinformation on social media platforms. What advice would you share with Gen Z members to be better at sorting through these misinformation posts and videos? And what skill sets must we develop to combat these attempts that, to misinform or to lie?
Well, I think, you just always need to employ critical thinking. If the conspiracy theory is rampant through social media, so when you read something, check it out, Google it, look for different sources that confirm that information. Don't get all of your information from one source, and don't take anything at face value. Do your research and see if there are differing views about that same subject, and then dig in and figure out what you think is truthful and factual.
Absolutely. Because, it's fortunately with the internet, it's easier in many ways to be an upstander, but it's also very easy to, fall into traps of people who are just deliberately trying to misinform. So like you said, I hope that our viewers are paying attention to how to sort that, because that's always been a challenge as social media has.
It is, absolutely. And if something, looking for easy answers and if you feel like something is scapegoating or looking for someone to blame, immediately question it.
Yeah.
Things are more complex than that.
Absolutely. I hope they're taking notes. Question it. Don't just think, oh, you saw that on social media, it must be true. Absolutely. So I was hoping that you could share with Gen Z members who are watching how they can access the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum online and the museum's social media accounts.
Oh, thank you so much. So absolutely, go to our website, dhhrm.org. There, I want you to go look at our YouTube channel, DHHRM YouTube. We have all of our past programs on YouTube, so you can, really dig in and learn about different topics. We cover all kinds of history in those programs. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We are, publishing social posts every day. You can tell I'm old school because I just said publishing, but we're posting, and we are raising issues that are important. So please follow us and engage with us and join the conversation.
Absolutely. We always talk on this show about making sure that you speak up, speak out, use your voice, whether that be voting or activism or in any other area. And so I really hope that our Gen Zers take advantage of this amazing resources. Our viewers.
Thanks, Haley. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today. This conversation was amazing.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for what you're doing. I
Absolutely.
really admire you.
Thank you. It was a deep and inspiring conversation indeed. I hope it gets you viewers thinking about our origin, learning from our true history, and what to do to get our country to grow in a direction of good in our future. Thank you, Ms. Higgins, for talking with me and educating and inspiring Gen Z on this very important issue. Your Zoom call to action? Yep. Check out resources in your community like the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum. Go take in the stories, understand the messages, and share your experiences, thoughts, and what you learned. Post on social media about the museum, get friends and family to go, and educate others about the museum and what it holds. Support the museum as it is so valuable to our community and amplify stories and messages as they are so valuable to the world. These so-called adults may be able to ban books or fire a principal, but Gen Z, they can't stop us from educating each other through social media and the internet. Let's do what we do and make sure they understand that we will never accept nor internalize their racism and hate. As we end this episode, I want to take one moment to say happy Rovember, you see my sweatshirt, to the amazing women of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. Yep. Well, that's all, folks. Episode 16 of Zooming In with Gen Z is all wrapped up. Thanks so much for joining us today. Please like, share, comment, follow, and subscribe for more. Plus, when you do that, it allows others to check out our conversations too. In 2 weeks, we'll be back here at 2 p.m. Central Time with some important news and an important person. An easy way to remember is 2 twice. 2 weeks, 2 p.m. Central. Before I do the shout out, I also want to say next episode, we might add a segment called either your playlist queue or your coffee table to talk about what you should be reading and watching, or what you are reading and watching, or what the recommendation is. So make sure you leave comments about what you're reading and watching so we can put them in the episode. And also we'll be trying to highlight more of you guys' questions too, because I did see in the comments a question for Channing, and as time goes on, we will try to shout out you guys' questions to our guests. So we'll have like maybe a freestyle period at the end of interviews. So be sure to be engaged as you're watching. But now to go to the shout out, thanks to Citizen Ed for providing us with this platform to talk about the issues we care about. See you guys in 2 weeks. How do I zoom out on this thing?